All right, welcome to the Crazy Blessed Show. And have you ever seen that person, that person that you look at like, wow, their life, so amazing, right? You want to know what's behind it all. Well, I have a friend, her name's Allie Brown, incredible woman. She is one of the top leading entrepreneurs in the world. She has an entire organization for women's empowerment, incredible mom, incredible woman. And she's going to be our guest today. And we get a behind the stage look at how this woman does it all. You're going to love this. You're going to be blessed like crazy. Allie, I am so excited to have you here with me today.
Oh, it's great to be here. Great to finally connect, Hannah. Again. Long time later.
It's so funny. So we have to tell everyone who's listening, watching, like we had a great podcast episode years ago before you became a mom, before you had the twins. And it's funny because how the changes that happen when you're a mom and how perspectives shift and all of that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I'm getting a visual of me probably on the phone with you in my Gucci pants, like booking Pilates for later that afternoon. And I was telling people how to manage their time. Right. And now when this all happened, I apologized to all the moms. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I was always like, just get a sitter, work harder.
Yes. Time for repentance.
It's totally, it's all I knew though. Right. Cause I just knew how to do things the way I've done them. So it's wonderful today because I have so many women come to me and they will share. The reason I'm following you now, Allie, is because I've seen the journey you've been on. Like before it was great. You were missed all that and the business and all that, but to see how you've made very conscious decisions around your life, some not so conscious and some very conscious, and really doing things differently in a different way. And so it's so cool along the journey that you'll find followers and people who align with that. Yeah. And maybe some people who still want Gucci pants, they can find plenty of boss babes online, all that stuff.
So, right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's so funny. I remember when, it's funny because I don't even know if you remember this, years ago, you had invited me to come speak at one of your conferences. And I actually
was it Shine?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's so
wow.
But you know what was so embarrassing for me? I didn't have the money. To actually
make it
out there. I did not have the money. And here I am trying to build a business, helping people. And I'm in the middle of a struggle too. And sometimes you feel like, okay, God, I'm in the middle of it and you've positioned me to help other people. Right. And so, and I wanted to share that with you because it was like, it was embarrassing for me at the time,
Wow.
And I wanted also to share that with everyone who's listening or watching, that sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you almost feel like you're not being authentic because you're like, God, shouldn't I be on the other side of this? If I'm going to talk about prosperity, if I'm going to talk about walking in power, if I'm going to talk about emotional freedom, shouldn't I be at the end of it? But sometimes God calls us right in the middle of it to be walking alongside other people and being able to lead the way that way because we're willing to do it for ourselves. But I just thought it was funny. I wanted to share that with you because our lives have changed so much and really not that long of a time, like maybe like 6-7 years.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk with your perspective now. Like people will look at your life. And it's like, man, that's so crazy blessed. Like living, like being able to be one of the top entrepreneurs in the world and being able to lead a women's empowerment group and leading, 7-8 figure earners. Incredible. But I would love for you to take us on the journey and share a little bit about how this happened in your life, how you got there. Like that's what we do here. We keep it real.
And it's good to go back because it reminds me as well, like these are my favorite discussions because I'm like, oh yeah, I made some good decisions and some bad ones, but like, the whole, this is your life kind of flashback. And, I like people to know, I think this is worth sharing that I always thought I would have had that traditional job trajectory, like my family, my town friends. It was all about like, going to college and then what's your career path going to be? And I just, kind of followed along with that. And then when I got out of school in my 20s, I realized I had just been grossly disillusioned,
Mm.
and that full-time employment at like a normal company was like the antithesis of who I was. And to everyone's dismay, right at home, like, I could imagine the rumors going, everyone was talking about the girl who got the medical sales job and was right out the bat back then making 40 grand a year, was like, wow, an expense
Right.
account. And I'm trying different things on. I'm working at different companies. There's one point when I was 25, I was working at a publishing company, teaching step aerobics part-time and selling vitamins from the back of my bicycle. Like, I just obviously was trying to figure this out. But looking back, like, that was a precursor to what I do today, like just putting it together, like the whole gig economy where everything's going. I always kind of felt more drawn to that. And so, try things on. I think what terrifies me is when I meet really young people who are locked into what they think they want to do. Because every day I have people walking in my door, these women in their 40s, 50s, and they want to dramatically change things. So just, that's the exciting thing about right now, is because the world's changing so quickly, you actually can't choose that straight trajectory. There is no linear option, right? It's a bigger discussion. But so I bounced around a lot. And then my last job, though, I really had fun at, was this little ad agency in New York. And I was a bit out of place. It was run by these two old Orthodox Jewish guys. Like, I wasn't familiar with their faith. I came in like guns ablazing, this 20 something feminist,
Right.
and it all worked though. It was this crazy little ad agency with like wacky people. There's a cat running through the meetings. There's like, and I loved it though, because they were out a lot at client meetings. And so I got to kind of run the place, and I am the 25-year-old girl, right? Telling these older guys, like, the client's coming, we got to clean up the office, and like, we can't deal with this fax machine. So I naturally kind of realized I was doing this, and I'm like, I think this is like running my own business. And when I saw the opportunity for freelancing, because there was this guy coming in and out, I learned more about freelancing. I'm like, that's what I want to do. I get to do some of the stuff I like, but I can work at home. Like, to me, like, my mind was blown. Like, my awareness shifted. And once your awareness shifts like that, when you're in that right place, there's just no going back. I just sat at my desk and dreamed of this all day. And so I quit, and didn't tell my parents, didn't tell a lot of people. I remember going to Staples. You'll remember this, I think. I mean, I went to Staples and bought one of those like multifunction printer fax machines and took it home on the subway. I was so excited.
You're like, this is legit now. This is legit. I remember buying a Rolodex, girl. I remember
this thing at home. Yeah. Like, I was so proud. I'm like, this is it. It was like hanging my shingle to buy that like multifunction
so
thing.
Because we literally did the same thing. My husband and I went to, we didn't go to, let me see, was it Staples or was it Office Max? We went to one of them, but it was like, we are getting ourselves a fax machine. Hot dang. This is the day.
And my clients were so impressed. They're like, you have a fax? I'm like, yeah, I do. In this crappy little apartment. I should have, but so I loved the freedom of it. I knocked on doors. I went to ad agencies. I just listened. I met people and I listened. I listened a lot. People would say, you know what? I don't have work for you, but this agency I know uses freelancers all the time. Go down the street. And I'm so glad, Hannah, that this was all before before internet was mainstream, before social media. You know why? I had no one to compare myself to.
Right.
I couldn't look up the answers to things. And I had no choice but to just talk to people and figure this all out. And that's what started, actually. People are like, how'd you become an online marketer? And I said, really talking to people. That is how this all started in the beginning. And I don't know how far you want to go with that, but that was really the kickoff of all this. The shift that I made into coaching and teaching and all this stuff was when I had people asking me, hey, how are you doing an email newsletter? I'd started this little newsletter to keep in touch with clients and people I met. I'd give like little marketing tips and things. It's nothing fancy, but I had some good stuff to share that I'd learned, and I was studying a lot. And so I put this thing out, and then people were asking me, how are you doing this email newsletter? And I'm like, gosh, I don't really know. I'm not an expert, but I could share what I know. And they found it so amazing that I literally bought an ebook on how to sell ebooks and put it in an ebook and put it up. And these were the days, man.
That's like product inception. I bought an ebook about how to sell an ebook, and I put in an ebook.
This isn't that hard. Okay. I want to emphasize that to everybody. Like, and back then it was so simple. No one was saying you need to dance on TikTok. No one was saying you need a 14-step funnel. I literally had this little list, and I said, hey, I just put this thing together. It's like $39. have at it, if you're interested. And went out for the day and came back. And it was like, bam, 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 all these orders. And I'm like, oh, this is fun. This is fun. And so I said, why don't I just teach what I know? And if they don't buy, I don't care. Like I always loved teaching and sharing and mentoring people. And so that's how this all started. And it grew to thousands of people in my programs. Like we had wild events with like 500 women there. And I rented out Tao, the nightclub, so they could all have a good time. It just a wild ride. And then, I got to a point though, that I really wanted some very different things. And I'm sure we'll talk about that, but it was, it was a time of my life, man. Like just seeing how the internet was growing so quickly, helping people who were starting their own businesses, getting online. This was the beginning of all this. So if you're listening to this or watching this thinking, all this stuff you see going on right now, this is where it all started. It was with those of us back then who really kind of the OG group, who we were the teachers. We would teach really great stuff and teach people how to go out and empower themselves and use the internet as a platform to grow their business or create products that help people.
Yeah. And it's almost like I think sometimes I think a lot of times we overcomplicate it. Like
it's insane right now.
Like coaching people, it's like, it does not have to be this hard. I think there's this idea, and I see it whether you're a 8-figure business owner or whether you're, stay-at-home mom trying to figure out what you're going to throw in the crock pot, doesn't matter. It's the idea that life is hard. So the solution has to be just as hard. Yeah. And sometimes we will just make things so complicated. I remember my last training that I was doing on sales, they were like, well, wait, this is so easy. And I said, yeah, it doesn't
they don't trust it.
Be hard.
Yeah. We don't trust
it. Doesn't have to be hard, but I think that's around every single life change. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We don't trust that it could be.
But I'm sorry. Go ahead. There's like a lag.
That's okay. We don't trust that it can be simple. And this is an epidemic right now, that I have people even coming in my door once they built these companies, like you just mentioned. And we look at the complexity of what they've created and they're having a meltdown. Like some of these women, like they fried their adrenals. They're trying to work like men, which we're not designed to do. We're making things people are selling the complexity because that's what people think they need. And they think it's the next answer. And the complexity is not the answer. So I strip things down. It terrifies them. We'll start crossing things off on the board, changing things. And they'll be like, let's zone in on what do you love? Where are your clients? Do they have money? Okay. And let's pick the market that you enjoy and actually pays you on time. And so like all these questions. So I'm known as kind of the, I need a name for that, but like I come in and clean out, I come in and clean things out, and like the complexity is a huge issue. So that's great. You identified that. So true.
That is so true. Well, okay. So you touched on something and I definitely want to go there. It's that they're trying to work like men and they're not designed to work that way. So this podcast, of course, is and this show is for men and women, but I think it's important for both to understand how they work. So they don't have to try to think they have to be someone else in order to get the same results. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'll give an example. The moment I really realized the difference, because I kept thinking, no, we're all the same, and I'm just, I started learning from the internet, a lot of the internet guys. So the jokes I put up with for all of you ladies, like this was well before Me Too. Like I just be like, oh, ha ha ha, and I had to sit in these rooms. So I was the only woman in mastermind of 21 guys. And that was part of Dan Kennedy, if some of you know who he is, the old marketing guy. He's not dead. People think he's dead. He's not. He's alive. I still mention him at least once a week in everything I do, like marketing principles that do not change. And it was a great group. And these guys were good guys. And but I would notice I'd get to the front of the room and I'd be like so proud of myself with something I did. And I had this event and it generated this, and then great. And then, Bill, he's like, you gotta double it. Okay. All right. Like what's the next challenge, right? What's the next thing? Do 2 events a year. Right. And then the 2 events a year that I was trying to do nearly killed me. During the second one, which I probably shouldn't have had anyway, my dad got sick, and it just Like nothing felt right. And I'm like, why can't I just have one event a year? Because and finally I remember going head to head with these guys. I'm like, they're like, why do you want to only have one event a year? And I'm like, because it makes me happy. And they were like, you know, it was like, does not compute.
Like
it was just funny.
disconnect.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get that for them, it may be about the game. And again, I'm grossly generalizing here, right? I mean,
Oh yeah.
what's the differences between us are you know, so many different things in different ways, but, it could be a sex difference, but it could also be just how my business has always followed my personal evolution. And my business for me was an expression of myself and what I wanted to create in the world, my purpose in the world. Some people's business, honestly, is not that. Sometimes it's something they see a good model and they create it and they move on to the next thing. I've never been that way. And so I find this is true though for many women. Their business is intrinsically linked, like internally, to who they are and who they are becoming in the world. And so when you try to put then a formula on that and make this incredibly complex, incredibly unfun, incredibly misaligned with who they are, they may build something, they can get to a certain point, but there's a cost. And I'm not saying that it's one or the other. You know, I've never liked this, like, do you want a lifestyle business or do you want a real business argument? I'm like, we are inventing the new models. That's still comparing things to the old models, right? We are inventing new models where everything is holistic. And I do think men are craving this too. They've had enough of this. When you look at what's going on in the world right now, these old systems are collapsing. Yeah. Everything's falling apart. And it's so good because we're realizing, oh my God, these corporations never helped us anyway. It's all falling apart because it was all air, or you can't work that way the rest of your life. And it's all good. So just zone in on you. Yeah. You. Not even you as a woman or you as a man, just like you, who you are, you're human. Who is your human? And how does your particular human thrive and want to build a business? And so in 2014, 15, 16 was my great dismantling of what I had created.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Gosh, I mean, twins will do this too as well. You know, you'll finally be like, all right, what's really important to me right now, because there's a lot coming at you, right? And then I don't post about this often, but my mom lives here as well. She's elderly, handicapped. You know, I don't go doing these verbose posts about how I take care of my mom. I just take care of my mom. My mom's here. And so there's all this stuff, right? And then suddenly this new marriage and then the kids and just all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, I just felt called to finally alleviate a lot of stress, alleviate a lot of complexity. I wasn't the type, honestly, to kind of have the business run itself and still be the CEO. It's a long discussion if I were going to break it down, but tried a few different models, just didn't fit who I was. Yeah. So I said, then what's my sweet spot? What is the one area? I do this exercise at my event, Iconic, when people are trying to like make this next decision or maybe zone in. Where's the one area that you are like untouchable, that you know, like people can't compete with what you do, with who you are, like you feel so in your zone, you love these people. And for me, it was those women, very small portion of all the women I work with. Actually, I realized that were the 7 and 8 figure earners. And it wasn't that I didn't enjoy helping women of all levels, but that was the zone, man, that I knew. I'm like, no one can do what I do over here. People can teach this stuff, but now there's thousands of coaches teaching this stuff. I saw this coming, but I'm like, the deep work, the one-on-one work, which no one does anymore, right? I'm like, could I just do this? Could I go back to like having 10 clients and like growing this women's network? Oh my God. And work 3 days a week. And actually, you know, when I started to make this shift, seeing how I could net more with less complexity, right? Yeah. And this goes against the whole, like, you got to scale, right? You got to go big. There's different ways to do this. I'm going to scale in my own way. My way of scaling is working 2-3 days a week and homeschooling my kids and doing like stuff that I never imagined me doing, you know, when you talk to Gucci Pants, right?
Right. Like ask so her about amazing. Homeschooling her kids, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'd be like the Duggars, you know, this is what I think of.
No, I do not have a denim jumper. I don't know how to do this.
Denim jumper. Yeah, I don't. Although those do look really comfy.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
they are.
Yeah.
But I remember the same thing. And I think what you're talking about is so needed to be discussed today, Allie, because everyone's looking around on social media saying, how do I need to do my life? How do I need to do my family? How do I need to do my business? And we've become like these like system junkies where we're like, okay, what's the next? What's the next? And all of a sudden we're just kind of whirling in this desperation. And if anything comes out of this podcast, what if we could just look at ourselves, our families, our lives, our business, and say, what would this look like as just an extension of me? And just own it. Like we have permission to do that. We have the power to do that. What would it look like if you didn't have to look outside of yourself to decide how you were going to run your family? Like I could not look outside of myself to see how to run a family, 7 kids, now grandkids. Like I have to say, now, what does this look like for me? For my joy, what I want to see my purpose fulfilled in life. And the same thing, we can't operate incongruent to how we are. So if we're trying to operate a business or a family incongruent to how we're wired, it's never going to mesh. So we can just
there's such incongruence in not only the business world, but the world right now. And that is what we're seeing. There's so much misalignment. There's people saying this, there's so many levels to this could honestly be a weak discussion. So I won't go there, but just if people got aligned again with who they are and what they believe in, and just doing things the way they really want to do, it would alleviate so much pain. It would alleviate so much pain for people in the world right now during this time of huge upheaval and transition. I'm not talking about tangible world events. I'm talking about kind of this mental, emotional muck that we've been through the last 2 years, right? External events aside, but like everyone's going through kind of this rebirth. You know, in some communities, they're calling it the ascension, some the apocalypse, right? It's a little of both. Apocalypse means the unveiling.
Wow.
Fascinating when you look at that word. And now I've become fascinated again now with even the Bible and reading about this and what the apocalypse represents. And I'm just like, oh my God, are we in end times? Because I'm calling some friends who are, you know, more of my super Christian friends, and I'm like, is this like, there's like locusts and like, you know, you start reading the crazy news stories and you're like, oh my God, is this coming together?
I think we are. And I think this happens internally as much as externally. And it is when, like, think about the original sin was trusting in your way instead of God's. Like that was everything about God. I know you told me this. I know you told me that I have all abundance and you don't, and I know you told me like, not this, but God, I'm going to like do it my way and not yours. And that's a total shift that I think people are beginning. That we're coming face to face with that. What does this look?
I've never interpreted the story that way, and that's now that rings so true for me. Like when you know, we think from external advice or people, or you know, you're supposed to do this or like this or you know, want this, and that leads us down all these paths. Which, you know, I don't know anyone who's not woken up who hasn't gone down the path or the wrong way, right? Because then you see, oh, this is kind of, you know, this is all great, and money can buy happiness, not joy, not purpose, not but like the stuff that makes you happy, you know, like I like comfort, I like, you know, nice clothes and nice home, and like and you know, things that kind of make you happy on that surface, but on that internal level, like when you get so clear and so connected, it just changes, it just changes everything. And so what I think that, you know, and everyone has their own interpretation, I'm fascinated with this, but what I think that lifting of the veil is in some ways for many of us is like seeing like, oh my God, none of this stuff worked anyway. You know, what have I been following? Who have been my, you know, false gods we talk about in Iconic too, like, you know, whether it's metrics, likes,
whatever,
you know, all the celeb stuff, like who cares? Like why are we even watching this stuff? Like I don't care. People
I know
it's coming back to who we are and how we were made. That's what I feel.
And it's at that moment, like think about it, when this original sin happened, that break, right? I'm going to trust in me and I'm not going to trust in you. All of a sudden they're trying to cover themselves, right? And the question that God said was, who told you you were naked? And they were like, well, we hid from you because we were naked. He said, who told you you were naked? And I think that's where we are right now, is we're listening so much to the world on how to define who we are, that now when we come face to face with the Spirit of God, God's like, who told you you were anything less than what I created you to be? If we can go back and get anchored into that. And I think that's what's missing. And it can dictate how we begin to live out our purpose, how we begin to manage our families and our business. It all goes back to who we believe we truly are. And when we know that we are extensions of God, like God breathed his Spirit into us. And that's funny, because we'll get on this conversation about how to backstage pass to building a business. Now we're talking about the apocalypse.
Oh yeah, this is how we roll
with God, right? That's just us. But I think this is,
we got front row seats.
Yeah, man.
Front row seats,
yeah, man.
ladies
It's so good.
Gentlemen.
It's so good. But this life, truly, this is a beautiful time. And I believe in pain, which is, and not just pain, but you mentioned like being in pain right now, but also I don't want the pain. And I also don't want the regret of living anything less than what I could have lived. And I think when we can get to that, and I love how you just embody that, Allie, where you just embody getting to who you are and living out your purpose and defining what that field is that God has placed you in, and work it. I think it's beautiful. I think it's blessed. And I think it sets a wonderful example for other people as well.
Thank you.
You're a powerful woman.
I'm remembering that right now. Thank you.
Awesome. Remember it every single day. It's funny. There's a verse in the Bible where he says, call me into remembrance of my word, where we can actually go to the Bible and say, hey, God, you said this, but also we have to remember, we need to call ourselves into remembrance of who he made us to be.
I think that's what this time is about. It's about people remembering who we really, really are, and starting to just unhook from all these external validations. So in the business world, just to bring it back full circle, how much are you addicted to social media? How much are you watching other people? How are you grading yourself? How are you, so for example, if I didn't have a packed ballroom, I would feel like, man, it wasn't quite the best event ever, right? Like, and now, oh my gosh, it's just so different. It's funny to think that I even cared about that now. It's about doing my great work here during this lifetime. That's what it's really about. And I think all of you, if you're going through a change right now, this is the time. Now's the time to actually make it. Now is the time. There's so much opportunity in the middle of all this. There's so much opportunity. And when you step in and align who you are, it gets easier. There's the hard part, but the hard part's detaching from everything we put upon ourselves in the first place.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. And well said. Allie, thank you so much. Your wisdom is not only just a gem, it's a treasure, but also it's going to help us live that life that I think we're called to live. And out of that, we're going to be blessed like crazy. Thank you.